We just spent about a week over in New York City at Affiliate Summit East, and before that at MailCon, where Rob and I both had the privilege of speaking about email-related marketing advice. Rob, what was your session about, just in brief?
Um, the long and short of it is basically how to leverage AI properly inside of, well, since it was MailCon, email. But basically just went into, what are most people using it for? What can you actually use it for? What are your friends telling you that they're using it for, but they're really not? And basically how to do stuff from home as well. So I tried to do, it's only 30 minutes. There's only so much you can do in that, but it ended up pretty good. And hopefully, it helped a lot of people understand a better understanding of the landscape because it's
Yeah.
definitely changing so fast.
Yeah, and to your credit, I mean, your slides and presentation included a bunch of details about the actual tools involved, what the
Yep.
actual tools do. We're not talking just like dump stuff into GPT, right? We're talking about here's an orchestrator that makes a bunch of different AI agents serve you. Not every AI agent is good at everything, so use the tools that are best at their particular tasks, and that way you also save on tokens, you save on
Yep.
processing, etc. A bunch of things to build really practical tools that I think it blew away a lot of people in the room. There were just a lot of cameras up going like trying to
Oh,
capture it. So
yeah, I mean, and, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot that people can put in there that would be, good or whatever, but really, I just wanted to hand it to people because even if they have it, one, it doesn't affect me negatively. Like it's not going to be something like giving away a secret. It's like, oh no, with all of that, it's like, one of the examples I used that I actually put in the slides is, how do you take the psychological principles of what is performed for a user in the past and modify the new creative around that, right? So if they reply better or react better to something like fear of missing out or, urgency, it would kind of modify around that. So that's a small example, but then the next example was how to do that programmatically. Then the next example was how to put this into your workflow. And then the next example was how to do this for entire segments at once. But yeah, I included, the settings I use like temperature, top K, top P for self-hosted models. I put my list of all the agentic frameworks that usually I come across and everything else in between. And then I ended it by literally saying everything with the stars is stuff that I've personally used and I would actually recommend that you would use. That to me is the bigger thing because there's a
yeah,
lot of wasted time.
there's a lot of wasted time, and there's also just a lot of confusion out there. And we'll talk about that in more detail because I think that was a big theme at ASE. Um, I also spoke at MailCon and talked about by telling the story of my previous mail teams that I've built. We were able to go through the mistakes that we made and the things that we learned, like compartmentalize your records so that you're not immediately taken down by one unsub, right? Actually have the records owned by a single parent entity. That parent entity then subs it out to your each of your mail entities, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of technical details as well about how to think about what will always work in deliverability for email, right? And the very short version of it is that if you look like mail that they cannot block because it would destroy everything else that creates value for them, that is always going to work, right? And that principle has held true for almost 15 years now, and it's not about to change. But um, but I digress. MailCon was awesome though. Terrific setup. Love the venue. Uh,
Yes.
Kristen and Marianne and Amy, they are just an awesome team. They just were such great hosts. The food was fantastic. I've never had
Oh, the food was amazing. The venue was amazing too. Like that's like don't get me wrong. I know, especially like affiliates on it. So like, it's like, oh, there's a party. Which club are we going to? Like the venue here was the perfect mix of, let's call it relaxed enough that you don't feel pressured for things, but also at the same time, it's private and you can trust people you talk to. So like for me, it's the perfect bridge. Like that's the perfect midpoint.
Yeah, it's
But
really
yeah,
those guys. And I thought it was a great touch that they put the exhibits in the middle of the area where the food was, where the drinks were, where you had to go in between going to different sessions, and you had to cross the whole exhibit floor, which was like 15 exhibitors. It's not a very large conference, right? But it was a very high quality crowd, a lot of CEOs, a lot of decision makers, which I
Yep.
really enjoyed. Um, and then the next day we went to ASE, which was over in the Marriott with fantastically tight security downstairs. Did not enjoy that. Wow. You had to have a badge or a code just to even get into the building. That was kind of nuts. And then the eighth floor. Anyway, not there to like complain about the conference. There were some like really interesting themes though, right? That I saw. Um, Probably the biggest thing was that there was just a very motivated crowd in terms of people were looking at new niches. They were asking what everybody else was doing, and they do this every year. But there's just like a different drive. I don't know. Did you did you
The urgency was different. Like it's you know there's the hey, quick question, what do you think about debt? And then there's the no, seriously, like what's working in debt right now? Like I need to figure out X, Y, and Z. There's the urgency is definitely a lot higher. Like you said, the questions don't change, just the parameters and the background and stuff like that changes. But yeah, definitely like there's normal expansion that you'll see, right? Like subprime will expand into other subprime. This was not that. This was people that are going from prime to subprime, from subprime to prime, or even changing channels. And that's the weird part is like some of these guys are specialists in like, I only do Google search the last 10 years. And they're like, today I email. And I'm like, where did that come from?
right?
But yeah, a lot more of that, a lot more of like changes the foundation of what you understand about what people are doing. And that was kind of weird to see so much of.
Yeah. But I will say like the channel changing, I don't blame them, or not changing channel expansion, right?
Oh,
Because that's ultimately how you build, for example, a successful brand or a successful,
yeah.
you spent, I don't know, 40 cents, a dollar, right, to acquire somebody on Facebook. And if you just monetize them once, it's much weaker than if you were to then engage them with email for the next 6 months, right? Even if it's just weekly, if you have an opportunity to re-engage 10%, 20% of your customer base in 6 months when they're ready again to purchase your particular primary product, that's a really good deal for you, actually, right? So there's a lot of that kind of attention to how to mature the business models that I think folks were looking at. Um, One of the things I really saw a lot of attention to was listicles,
Yep.
partly because the holidays are coming too, right? That's always a big time for listicles. Um, One of my colleagues mentioned that um, some folks were looking at rotators as the only thing that you need for a listicle, and that's true, right? All optimization, all AI learning, all machine learning, right? Training starts with rotation because you have to have some randomness, right, in order to learn. But then there's the decision making part, right? Are you hiring an intern to do it, or are you hiring a Harvard PhD? There's a difference, right, in the algorithm behind it. And I think maybe intentionally, right, there's a fair bit of um, attempt to kind of cover up what they were actually doing and just kind of smooth it all as being the same thing, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, I'm totally using AI, like we heard that a lot. Um, but that also happens, right?
I
There's
mean, by definition, technically, as long as they copy and paste the request into ChatGPT and then copy and paste the response back to the original person, they are technically using AI. That is accurate.
This is exactly, of course, when Rob is going to freeze because
Oh,
OpenAI heard you, man. It's
oh, it's going to keep going.
awesome. I also attended a M&A briefing with a couple iBankers and a couple of M&A attorneys, and they shared a couple of useful bits of information for the business owners in our crowd. The biggest thing was probably that the QBS, which is a exemption for startups and early businesses and small businesses, rose from 10 million in capital gains exemption to 15 million exemption. And now there was always a 5-year holding period, but now there's actually a 3-year holding period where you get 50% of the exclusion of capital gains, 4 years with 75%, and 5 years still is the 100% exclusion of capital gains, right? So those are big numbers. Those really matter. So definitely talk to your attorneys and CPA about that stuff. If you're running a small business that started within the last couple of years, so that might really matter for you to go cash in on that option. Um,
Definitely.
Aside from that, I noticed a lot of OGs actually resurfacing as well, right? A lot of folks like, oh yeah, I've been out of the industry for 5 years and now I'm back doing blurp, you know. Um, did you run into a couple of those too?
Yeah, there's definitely some people I haven't seen in probably, ironically, most, yeah, 5 years, some longer. And it's a combination of, some people are like, I just had to get back into it. I miss it. And I completely get that. But it's also, especially with society changing so much right now, the economy, everything else, for some of these guys, like this is what they're good at. Like being an AM or being a BD or whatever is really good. And it doesn't always translate into non-industry positions as well. So sometimes when it opens, it's a layup and you take it. But yeah, there's definitely some people that I thought, ignore my phrasing here, but got out. But yeah, no, they definitely, there's some people I didn't expect to see back. Glad to see them. Great people. But
Yeah,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how everything goes over the next, let's call it year, 2 years, especially with all the changes with everything.
yeah, yeah. But I think the biggest trend though was just everything being branded as AI, right? Kind of like you're saying. Um, the floor was what 600 companies that claim to be AI companies. Um, but we're a home services company, but we use AI, right?
Yep.
And does that mean you dump things into ChatGPT and then send it back to me, or um,
Well, it's like
uh,
it's like the difference between, optimizing and optimization. Like, do you have optimization? It's like, well, yeah, we optimize it. No, 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 that's not what I asked. Like, do you have an optimizer? Do you have optimization on your actual traffic? And so we'd be like, oh, well, we optimize this by changing the header. We optimize this by changing the ad copy. It's not the same as true optimization. But now there's a lot more terms like that in the industry falling between the cracks of ambiguity. There's a lot of people now using like this, like AI and machine learning. I say machine learning, they're like, you mean AI? And I'm like, okay, sure. But
well,
it's
just to clarify for the folks who don't know, optimizing might mean I'm not happy with my call to action, right? And so I'm going to change that on my lander and try a different phrasing, and I'll ask GPT or Claude or whatever for input, and I might try some of those things and run a split test, right?
yeah,
That's okay. That's a healthy thing to do. They should do that. It is not, I think, what the world currently is trying to mean when they say using AI, right? AI optimization involves an algorithm automatically taking the things that you're running. So, we build a product, it's called Boardwalk, right? And Boardwalk does this, right? So, very briefly, we first look at all the audience that comes through, and we treat, say, men from Texas differently than women from New York because those are different psychographic segments with different needs and different, et cetera. And we look at whether those behave differently and we hyper personalize, right, for that particular target. And we do that on an ongoing live basis so that if the offer pauses, well, that offer will not have traffic anymore in less than an hour, et cetera, et cetera. That's an example of what people should be striving for because it's possible now. That's the important part, right?
yep,
I think it's important not to settle for, well, we got a Claude account, we share, among the AMs, and we're good, we're good. Yeah, that's not the same thing.
no, not at all. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not going to help people. 100%, it'll make your life easier, and you can do X, Y, and Z. But there's a big difference between, let's call it, being augmented by it or having it do it. There's a big difference there. Um, and that was the kind of piece that got me a little bit, was just like looking at that as it's almost like they literally took, hey, question about my company. Can you name three things I do well? And then they name three and they go with AI. And then that's literally their pitch. But and don't get me wrong, there were some legitimate ones there too that actually did have like good setups and understood and everything else. But yeah, it's the next buzzword. It's just going to keep getting thrown onto stuff, and people are going to be like, well, technically there is an API if you use these 37 segments. Like, Cool.
Well, I mean, I think similar to data science, right, which was the buzzword, call it, like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
the folks who actually implement it correctly will dominate their segments, will absolutely, out earn their competition by multiples. And the folks who, pay lip service will need to be very motivated.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh yeah. And that gap's only going to get bigger, especially right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, segueing to something that we're interested in, we are super interested in the folks who are actually trying to be actively engaging with AI, who are trying to code with AI, trying to build their products, enhance their products with AI, and we are doing the same, and we've encountered some challenges in the sense that there's just too many tools, like you said earlier, right? There's a lot out there,
Yep.
and so we are starting a new segment on the podcast called Two Coders, One Vibe. And the idea is that we're going to invite on different companies who are engaging with AI tools to build, enhance, you know, to add to their service. And we'll ask them to identify a product or a project that they want to work on. Like, I want to do this integration right with this platform, or I want to write this module that does this connection or whatever. Um, and we'll do that project with them in the sense that they'll do a version, we'll do a version. We'll come back and compare the results on some very static measurable things like, how many tokens did you use, right? Which talks to the cost of the thing. We'll look at, the time involved, the tools involved, the challenges that different teams ran into. I really want to do this exercise because our engineering team is awesome, but we are very focused on building our kind of product, right? And my general theme is I like to build startups, which means that someday we'll go do a different thing. So I'd love to know what the tools that we have right now are good at and where the limits are. And so we are actively looking for other companies and teams or individuals, right, who are coding and playing with these tools. And we'd love to compare, right? And just try to see if we can start creating a kind of a repository of knowledge that's comparing, hey, what happens when you use these AIs and we use these AIs? Our stuff is cloud based and your stuff is local, et cetera, et cetera. And like look at the differences that are achieved there, and hopefully we all learn something through this process. So I'm really looking forward to that. Do you want to talk about some of the in general, right? We can't name them yet because we're not fully done. But do you want to touch on share some of the projects that we're looking at?
Yeah. So, broad strokes. The first one is I'm trying to think of a way I can describe this without giving it all away because it's kind of hard to describe based on what it is. Let's just say there is a certain language or two, programming language, that has not a lot of information about it, and a lot of other models are not really trained on it. So what'll be interesting with
Older,
something,
right?
yeah, like it's old. But with stuff like that, it's interesting to see, are the models going to be different? Are the models going to be efficient versus not? Can they assume what they can understand based on just the structure of the code versus knowing the actual language? Will fine tuning make a difference? Blah 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 blah. So there's a lot of different aspects that can go in and obviously completely influence the final answer. But with those, that's going to be an interesting one to see. Let's call it the models and their adaptability based on what they can understand already. Another one is more in the, I guess I would call it the theoretical. And that's more research in the, let's call it science aspect, on whether or not we can basically design something that will fit a criteria. I understand I am being broad as hell right now, and I literally cannot say more, but that's an idea that we're also kicking around. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
like also, I also want to talk to people that are just like doing it, like literally people that are at home on their own, like doing what. As long as you are building something that is something you are proud of,
Yep.
that's all that matters. Like
Yeah.
that's literally all that matters. So the goal for me is I want to see what went into it. I want to see the effort, the time, the thought process. I want to see the tooling, and I want to see whether or not the tooling compensates for the thought process if you missed something or it found something. So there's a lot of criteria, but as we go, I'm sure I'll find more that we can look at too.
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize that, right? In addition to looking at the tools, one of the things we're very interested in is what do people with different levels of expertise come out with, right? So one of the projects we're talking about relates to another industry in biotech that we know nothing about, right? So we're going to be the newbies there, and we're happy to be that, right? Because we want to see with that and with our set of tools, how do we do, right? Like, do we get valid results? And likewise, if we talk to somebody who's a more traditional sense of the vibe coder definition where they don't normally code, but they come in and work on this stuff. Well, ourselves as product people, we think about things like, I don't know, security or scalability or et cetera, right? Does that affect how the things come out because we ask for things, right? That maybe our guest doesn't think about, and so partly it's educational, right? Partly it's just like let's lift all boats by sharing information and seeing the contrast. But partly you could also call it it's sort of like a social experiment, but it's also a technical experiment, right? To see what is this thing that is like taking over society and taking over the way that companies and ideas are built.
Yep.
How does it do, right, with these different contexts? And we'd love to see the results and get a comparison. So, anyway, look forward to these episodes. We're going to try to do at least one of those a month. And if anybody would be interested in volunteering, we'd love to talk to you and hear out your idea and see if we can do a project together. So please contact us, and yeah, look forward to it.
And also just to wrap this up, and I'm sure Scott's going to tell someone to cut this out at the end. Um, we're still evaluating whether or not you all find value with stuff like this, whether it is the original idea where we go over the marketing stuff or the two coders, one vibe aspect where we go over the coding stuff.
Right.
I'm going to say something I wish everyone else told me when I started listening to podcasts. Everyone thinks the other guy is going to be the one that likes and subscribes that makes someone else understand that people are listening.
Right.
No, they aren't. They never are. They're never the person because they're always thinking you're the one. So if you have questions, please, we are approachable. Message us, ask us. If you want to see more like it or have ideas, please do it. If the platform we're on right now has comments, leave one. But
Want to see Rob's slides from his AI talk at MailCon? Ask for it, right? Like,
we can do that.
yeah, we're game for anything. So
One of the slides alone is literally 5 different self-hosted models. So yeah, and temperatures. But yeah, just let us know. Yeah. Just let us know what you want. And that's the thing is, this is not just for us to turn this into a sales segment or a marketing segment. We want to truly see the industry grow. And we only do that by being able to understand what the industry actually is. And that is not something this industry has ever done well. So as far as that goes, that's all I got.
all right, very cool. Thanks very much, guys. See you later.
See ya.